When students have mastered the composition of the numbers 11 through 19 as 1 10 and 1 to 9 ones, and the number 20 as 2 tens and 0 ones, they are ready to extend their learning to the decade structure of the base 10 number system. This involves learning that 20 means 2 tens, 30 means 3 tens, 40 means 4 tens, 50 means 5 tens, 60 means 6 tens, 70 means 7 tens, 80 means 8 tens, 90 means 9 tens. Teachers may overlook this important developmental step because students are able to easily memorize counting by 10 without understanding how the tens are composed and how they relate to each other. This is what we mean by the decade structure of the number system. Students must understand that numbers in every decade are composed in exactly the same way that numbers in the teens are composed. In fact, all numbers within 100 are composed of 0 to 9 tens and 0 to 9 ones. It is important to make this understanding explicit so that students do not simply memorize sequences of numbers. The MathRack number grid helps students to see the repeated patterns of the base 10 number system in terms of numeration, or how many. It is also important for students to learn these repeated patterns in terms of magnitude, or how much. This involves learning that the same number line that can be used to represent 0 to 9 ones and 1 10 can also be used to represent 0 to 9 tens and 100. However, it is critically important for students to understand that when we make this shift, we are changing the scale of our number line. Changing scale is like zooming in and zooming out. Students should recognize that the same strategies they use to determine how many ones are represented by a point on the 0 to 10 number line can also be used to determine how many tens are represented by a point on the 0 to 100 number line. In particular, they should know that the midpoint of the 0 to 100 number line is 50. We can see that this dot is closer to 100 than it is to 50. Thus we know that the dot is representing 8 tens, or 80. Finally, students should understand the repetitive composition of numbers within each decade. This means they should be able to use the same strategies they use to determine how many ones are represented by a dot on the 0 to 10 number line to determine how many ones there are in a number that is represented by a dot in any decade. Students can demonstrate mastery of the decade structure of the base 10 number system by responding to simple strings in which any digit is added to the tens. Students should be able to complete these strings very quickly with almost no thought and without any counting or computation of any kind. Students should also be able to respond very quickly to strings that involve adding a digit to a given number of ones in each decade. In this case, a student may need to compute the first sum or the first couple of sums, but they should be able to use the decade structure of the number system to complete the remaining sums with little, if any, thought.